Good night, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I hope everybody is feeling blessed despite the times. My name is Dr. Williams and I welcome you to SHU Public Service Union's panelist discussion on behalf of women. It was put forward by the Young Workers Committee in PSU. And our theme is women repositioning themselves for leadership or men in support. So we'll start with the opening prayer.
Heavenly Father, as I come before your throne this afternoon, I want to thank you for a bright evening. Heavenly Father, I bring before you the Public Service Union as we deliberate this evening on empowering women to take up leadership roles. Heavenly Father, I bring every woman of the union before you, every member, every person who's going to participate in today's proceedings. Heavenly Father, that we will come here and we'll deliberate in solidarity so that we can move not just only the union forward, but to position ladies in our community to take up leadership role. Heavenly Father, I wish your blessing on these proceedings as we leave everything else in your hands. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Lewis, as you're already up there, can you just give us the opening remarks, please?
I will also use this opportunity to welcome everybody here this evening. As we move forward this evening, we are positioning ladies to take leadership roles in not only in the union but in all spheres in our community. And we are showing the ladies this evening that we are in full support of them. We men are in full support, whether it's in the union or in society. And again, I use this opportunity to welcome our panelists and members of our audience, be it the inside the space or elsewhere. Thank you.
Without further ado, let's get this tonight's proceedings going. I'd like to present to you a young man I've known for a short period of time, but I'm feeling like I've known him for some time, a very long time. Mr. Kesley Cambridge is currently a counselor attached to the Liberty Lodge Boys Training Center within the Ministry of National Mobilization, Social Development, Family, Gender Affairs, Youth, Housing, and Informal Human Settlements. He holds a Master of Science degree in Applied Criminology and Forensic Psychology from the Edinburgh Napier University. Mr. Cambridge is currently the local country chapter coordinator for the Caribbean Male Action Network, CARIMEN. This is a regional network of individuals and organizations in the Caribbean region, working on transforming masculinities and engaging men and boys to promote gender equality. He has also been intimately involved with working with young people, particularly young males who come into conflict with the law both as a part of his work requirements and secularly. A past CARICOM Youth Ambassador, Mr. Cambridge sought to develop leadership skills in young people and encourage volunteerism through service in their respective communities and country at large. Moving along. He studied at the University of the West Indies, Cape Hill campus. He possessed a Master of Legislative Drafting, LLM, as of August 2017. To date, he is a Crown Counsel Chambers of the Attorney General of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Strong interest in sports, especially cricket and football. Mr. Kesron Walters, the University of the West Indies also granted him for the class of 2011, a Bachelor's of Law, second class honors. Norman Manley Law School, Consulate of Legal Education. He also was certified there with a certificate of legal education as of 2013. I give you Kesman Walters. And last but not least, an old friend of mine, not so old, but he's still going along quite strong. Administrative Officer in the Ministry of National Mobilization. Holds a Bachelor's in Youth Development Work with first class honors. Diploma with distinction in Gender Development Studies. International Area Technical Official with World Athletics. Public servant as of 21 years. And a member of the PSU for 21 years. So as he came into PSU, he just basically got the ball rolling. A father, a husband, brother, and community activist. And we have our radio personality here. The fugitive, the radio announcer,
So
and well-known DJ Simmons
Did you mention his name?
on the morning wake-up call.
He
Let's
mentioned
get
Phil Cow?
started.
I don't think so. He did?
So it's over to you, Fuji.
Loving joining, saying good night and welcoming all who will join us via social media, wherever the discussion will be heard. We say good night and welcome to this panel discussion. Tonight's discussion, women repositioning themselves for leadership or men in support. This conversation makes a part of the ongoing activities to celebrate International Women's Day 2021. International Women's Day, just for a brief history, a day that has been marked for over a century, dated back to 1911, and is commemorated across the globe annually on March 8th, celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. A day that is also utilized to lobby for accelerated gender parity across various professions and also to continue raising awareness in regards to gender equality. This year's theme, International Women's Day, celebrated under the slogan, Choose to Challenge. And deliberately, we have an all-male cast tonight that will be joined by in terms of our discussion. Deliberately so, yes, because we are here to let you know, ladies, that we do stand in solidarity with you, or women, all right, and with our deep bass voices, resoundingly, we say to our mothers, our grandmothers, or godmothers, wives, girlfriends, or daughters, sisters, etc., that we support you. Alright? We're going to start our discussion, we're going to jump right into it. I guess we'll allow our panelists to start off with a brief opening remark. I guess we can start with Kesley.
Okay. Of course, thank you to PSU for this opportunity so that I can make my contribution, learn, and be a part of the discussion. And when I looked at the theme for this afternoon's discussion, I would have done a bit of research just to get an idea of how I'm going to present my part. And I want to start out by a quote that I found very interesting online. It says, "Everyone likes a strong and independent woman until she threatens their ego." And I'm putting in brackets here, some men, until she threatens some men's ego. And I think that with this theme that we have here, from my part, I'm going to be discussing where men, their role, masculinity, and a range of other factors come into play that can hinder whether or not support is given, to discuss whether or not men should give support, and the different challenges that some men may face and women may face in receiving and giving support when it comes to their position as leaders in our society.
Okay, thank you, Kesley. Kesman?
Thank you very much, Mr. Fugitive, and good afternoon, good evening to all our listeners. My role today would be to discuss the perspective of women in leadership in the legal field. And it is quite interesting what you would turn up in research. As Kesley said, coming into this panel discussion, I did a little research myself, and it's interesting what you would turn up. Did you know that it was not until the 1970s that women started enrolling in law school? The USA, for example, in Harvard did not admit women to learn how to read for a degree in law until the 1950s. And the last two universities in the USA, Washington Lee, and I don't remember the other name, admitted women to read for a degree in law in 1972. And it would show how women were regarded in historical times in the area of law. Not many women would have practiced law, and many countries around the world would have prohibited women from, or restricted women from reading for a degree in law, except with the exception of New Zealand. I do not recall in St. Vincent and the Grenadines if we ever inherited any laws restricting women from reading for a degree in law, but you can see the evolution of thinking in this area from the 1970s forward. And I could, for fear of being prolix, I could think of our most senior female practitioners, Madame Renée Baptiste and Kay Bacchus Baptiste. And both of them have in excess of 40 years practice, and they would have commenced their training and practice in the 1970s, I would believe. And here we are today, where the legal profession is mostly dominated by women. But I guess as the night progresses, we will hear more about it.
Thank you, Keswan. Philippa.
I guess at this point, as the moderator introduced, that I'm the old one, so I'm left at the end. But it suffices to say that I'm happy that we can be a part of a discussion and a conversation that not only looks at the issue of women, but how we as men are in support of our women. I have intentions during discussion to be a little controversial on some areas. But like my colleagues have said, in doing research, you find some very interesting issues. I went to a site that called Women Deliver, and there they're talking about women in leadership, and it says, it is time for the world to recognize the benefits of women in leadership and to commit to placing them even more in positions of power. The power of women in leadership are their agents of change, and the far-reaching benefits on diversity and gender parity in leadership and decision-making are increasingly recognized in all spheres. Still, women continue to be vastly underrepresented in decision-making in politics, businesses, and communities. What are the evidence that supports this? Well, women as leaders and decision-makers are at all levels are critical to advancing gender justice and gender equality, and to further economic, social, and political progress for all. So they are suggesting that when women are meaningfully represented and engaged in leadership bodies such as legislators, courts, executive boards, community councils, laws, rulings, and decisions are more likely to be inclusive, representative, and to take diverse views into account. Women's leadership in households, including decision makers over land, household income, improve access to education and healthcare for the families also improves. However, one of the challenges that you live each day and you see, the more women get into power, apparently they are the ones who tend to fight against their own colleagues, their own female counterparts. And as I said, I want to be controversial for that fact. However, where you would have expected that the men would have been the one to push against the women and keep them in that 1960s area, you find that women now become the ones who are doing that very same thing. Conversely, our men now are encouraging their women, and I'm talking about men on the block. I'm talking about the ghetto youth. I'm talking about the DJs, the conductors, the van drivers. Those who society have a different look on are now encouraging their women to go to evening classes. They're encouraging their women to do university degrees. And you see the women advancing. Now you can find whatever conversation you want after that. But the point is, as men, we are continually supporting our women to advance. And so I would leave that there and allow you, Fugitive, to go from there. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure I make that point and make it very controversial.
Okay. And you know I love controversy. No, but it is truly an honor and a privilege to be part of this powerful discussion that gives us the opportunity to join in this call to action by women for the betterment and empowering of women, a call that is being supported by our men. Women repositioning themselves for leadership. Times are changing and things are evolving. So too are the roles that have been taken up or given to or considered specifically for women. Our women are now saying they deserve better and are demanding better. And in many cases across the globe have been repositioning themselves to ensure that they achieve greater than what might have been perceived to be sufficient for a woman in years gone by. Gone are the days when women were seen as only as stay-at-home moms or housewives, sexual objects. Not even in church, women had a say. In more recent times as men, we had problems accepting the reality of all women being in better jobs than us, making a larger salary than us, becoming more educated than us. Those days are gone. Today in most countries across the globe, more and more men are coming around to accepting gender equality. Now, to the panel. In a modern world, modern society, developing country, how important is this shift in the mindset among our men? And where would you say here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, is the mindset of men when it comes to that shift, when it comes to us readily accepting and standing in solidarity with our women, encouraging them to reposition themselves and take up leadership roles? How important is the mindset? Where is that mindset here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? The shift in mindset, how important is that shift in the mindset? And where are we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as men?
Well, like I say,
whosoever will.
All right. Well, let me take a shot at it based on a program that the Ministry of National Mobilization would have conducted some years ago. Fiji would have been a part of the process, the MAP Empowerment Program.
Right.
We were supported by the US Peace Corps in that regard, and what that program intended to do was to bring to the fore the issues of men and the issues of not being able to engage their female counterparts with relationship issues, generally things that men would not have done. And so our ministry decided to go to the guys where they're at. So if they were on the block, they were at a rum shop, that's where this session was held. And what came out of that is that you start hearing men having a different conversation about their daughters, their sisters, and then it eventually came around to my woman. And we talked about going back to evening classes, and you hear them saying, boy, even though I have to go down the road and wait, I will let you go evening class, I will go and meet her, and we go walk home. You have those who work land. They tell you about their investment in working towards ensuring that money is become available, not for a house or a vehicle, but to ensure that their daughter had an university education. So in today's world where women are continually advancing, our men who have been able to understand the dynamics of women and their forward movement and the opportunities that are presented to women. We talk about sports. Look at what has happened. We have a number of our females from St. Vincent and the Grenadines who are accessing university education through sports. As recent as last weekend, Shafika Maloney broke our national 800 record, indoor record. And what that says to us is that once women are given the opportunities, that they can excel. But it calls for us as men to understand and appreciate the fact that we can and should be the pillars on which these women lead, because they are going to need support. Because I want to throw this in the mix as well. Women tend to be more emotional and not as logical as men would be. And so it is important that they understand, if you have the man who is logical with you who emotional, when you're doing your studies and things get real hard and you're ready to give up and the man is in support, he's going to say to you, babes, take it easy, go for a walk, go outside, come back in, let's do this together. And I'm talking about the man who understands. There are other men who are getting there. So I know my sister's going to be watching and smiling and saying, you sound like the ideal man. I talk in reality because before I sat behind that desk, I was in the ghetto with the youth. I was on the block with them, and so I understand the situation with them. They are not perfect, but they try. Kesley?
You call on me, okay.
Yeah, I have to you next to the doors.
Well, you have said a range of things, Philcal, and I agree with you to some extent, in the sense that I think more needs to be done when it comes to men supporting women. We're in 2021, and if we're to look at where the world is now when it comes to supporting women, I would say St. Vincent or the Caribbean, we have a lot of catching up to do. A lot. Now, when it comes to, I hear you where you said that, men who are conductors and all these things, they would support their women. But I want to take it a step further. When you consider men who are considered by societal standards to be successful already, and then you have a case where their woman becomes more successful than them, I think issues tend to come up there, right? As compared to, as you say, the ghetto guy, he gonna want to see his woman prosper and thing, yeah, why not? But when it comes to the man who is already deemed successful, and then his woman, in some instances, I'm not saying this for all successful men, in some instances you would have these men being affected unconsciously. So I read a quote where they said that a woman's success can affect a man unconsciously and can result in him acting out in different ways. And when they say acting out, it can be whether it is cheating, becoming aggressive, becoming irritable, and all these sort of things. So yes, we have made strides in the whole supporting women, but there needs to be much more, because if it is a case where we're saying we are supporting our women, where is the evidence to show? We don't have that much or enough evidence to say that, okay, we are making an effort to show our support. What I'm seeing right now is that, yes, we have started the journey. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. We have started that one step, but we still have a long ways to go in order for us to really embrace this whole notion of women becoming successful and the fact that women are repositioning themselves for success. Because how much men really enjoy, and I'm being real, some men become a bit concerned because men by and large, they function based on their ego. Because men, if their ego are affected and by a woman becoming, very successful, it takes a chip at the man's ego. In some other cases, and I'm going to end with this before I end up talking all night. In some other cases, you have a woman's success for some men would mean their failure. Because men have been socialized to be competitive, to win, to be successful. And when that is not there, problems arise. Right?
Nice. Pleasure.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say and make a very bold statement, an incredibly bold statement, that women today are where they are largely because of their own efforts. Listen carefully. If you think about all of the women who have reached the pinnacle or a pinnacle, broken the glass ceiling, the proverbial glass ceiling, they have had to fight for it. You think about Shirley Chisholm. She was the first black and woman congresswoman in the USA, right? You think about Margaret Thatcher, and she eventually had to fight her own peers, her own male peers, to remain at the helm. But you think about Hillary Rodham Clinton, who even women, when the exit polls showed in the USA, even women did not support her largely as they would have thought they would have for her presidential bid. And she was unsuccessful eventually. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. The mentality must change, but not only in men. Women themselves also need to support their fellow women. You think about here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We've never had a woman prime minister. How many presidents of the Public Service Union have been women? Women largely have gotten where they are because of their own efforts. A friend of mine said to me recently, she supported her boyfriend through his university studies, and when he came back, he got his job, he bought a car, etc. And now she wants to do it. He has a problem with it. A woman in that position has to will herself to break that glass ceiling, to get out of that comfort zone, and to push herself to the point where she can get what she wants. And women have largely done that. So where women have reached, and I must say kudos to them, they have fought for it.
I agree with all three responses. Let me say 2.5, because I'm a little bit yes and no, split down the middle by Phil Call's response, right? For my own observation, and I think it came out in Kesley's response as well, it is somewhat of a facade what is being presented by some men, right? There are some men who, yes, out front they would give that support, probably verbally, when they're in the crowd, probably when they're having a one-on-one with the woman, they give the impression that, yes, I support you, right? But genuinely, they're only supporting the woman and the woman pursuing success, simply because in their mind, they figure, well, boy, they just can't give up with the fight. You understand? If she can go out and get on our behalf, then it means that I have more time at home. I could play my video games. I have more time at home. I could go and run other women. I have more time at home where I can do me, instead of going out and assisting her so that we can achieve together. So to some extent, there are some men with that mindset, right? There are some men, however, who are arguing that supporting women in leadership role is a sign of weakness, is a sign of laziness on the part of men. Some are even saying that we as men are conceding and we're giving up. And there are some who even bring in the argument that it goes against the word of God. That's where I want to go next. In terms of where are our churches, where are the church leaders on this particular stance in support of our women? I mean, there are scripture verses, tons of scripture verses. There's the 1 Timothy, there's the 1 Corinthians, where I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man, rather she is to remain quiet. This is the scripture. We subscribe to the scripture. This is the teachings that came from the Almighty. Where are the churches? Your own views. Where are the churches? Where are the church leaders in this? Supporting our women in leadership roles.
But I talk already, so yeah, I can start.
I
can talk.
The old man can't always the discussion there is interesting, because up until just recently, we've not had female pastors. We've not had female priests, as you touch the church issue. And again, we go back to the proverbial breaking of the glass ceiling where these things are concerned. And you look and you recognize that through all that has happened, women continue to rise, women continue to struggle and band together. What you find happening is that the more traditional churches are not fully subscribing to women's places outside of the home. All right? The younger type of churches, those that are less than 100 years old, you find that they are more accepting to female pastors, they are more accepting to having females taking leading roles. So like for example, their worship teams are mainly females, and the excuse for that is they sound better than the bass and the baritone mixed together. Alright? So we have that as one side in the argument. But then on the other side, we are still saying that in order for a woman to be successful, she has to be a good homemaker. And a lot of religious sects is about that particular stance where the female place is in the home and not necessarily in a leadership position outside of the home setting. Because for those who understand those cultural contexts and the Bible readings and writings, would see that the context in which it was said that a woman's place is in the home. Alright? So she's expected, and then our whole socialization process encouraged all of that. If you were to give your son a doll baby fugitive, the world will cry shame on you. But if you give your daughter a car, nobody say anything about it. Alright? And so what we have seen is our socialization processes have mixed with our religious beliefs, have then turned our society into what it is today, where within the last 5 years, you're now seeing the emergence also of a lot of female gangs, female groupings coming out, but the church still remains in a position that it's spread the gospel, yes, but has not addressed these issues in its entirety, because it would be wrong of me to say that the church has done nothing, and that would be a lie. But they have not addressed the issues correctly of dealing with women taking these leadership positions and supporting the women in going for their dreams, their aspirations, as they would for females.
Okay, well, good luck. When it comes to the whole Bible, it's a very sensitive and ticklish subject personally, because I look at it in terms of context. When the Bible was written, it was written for the Jews, because we in the Caribbean here fall under the Gentiles, right? Because we're not Jews, so we're Gentiles. So I tend to try to look at it in terms of context, because the Bible also speaks of your clothing, what you should eat, and all these different type of things. And if it is a case that we're going to look at the Bible and say, okay, well, the Bible says that women should not X, Y, Z, A, B, C, you have to open the whole door for everything else that the Bible says as well. You can't pick and choose what the Bible says and apply it. You have to be willing to say that, okay, if we're going to go down this road, we have to ensure that we open the door. The pendulum swings both ways. So I tend to take a stand where, as Philcal said, we need to definitely have input from the churches on their stance when it comes to that, because I would say they are somewhat silent to some extent, but there needs to be more words from them, vocals. Be more vocal, right? Be more vocal.
Do we call on them to be more vocal, or we leave it up to them to, whenever they're ready to join any discussion and become vocal?
Well, I mean, if we do that, it might be a case where we have to wait another X, Y, and Z amount of years. So I think it should be that, yes, we call on them to have this dialogue. Let us talk about it. Let us see how we can come to some leveled agreement, some reasoning when it comes to women in leadership. But if we look at the Bible, women played a significant role in the successes of some of the men. And there's a tendency for us to only look at how these men, the after product of their success, the product of their success. But if we're looking at what would have contributed to their success, women played a role in that. So I wouldn't even say that it is a matter of leadership, because I think when you have percentages, if you want to say that the men did 60, the women did 40, it still amounts to 100. But we tend to look at only the 60% and neglect the fact that the 40 also would have contributed to the 60. And if the 100% is the leadership, we have to say that women too have been taking leadership roles as well.
But just to add one bit to that, because the example of Timothy, as a young boy, he was raised by his mother and his grandmother, Eunice and Lois and Eunice, that's the correct names. And what eventually happened, Timothy became a powerful presenter in the Bible. But when you look at it, how he was shaped, it was the female. They took the leading role to do that. And I would want to even go further and look at my own situation. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. And I mean, I had male influence in my life. All right? But they are the ones who basically created who I am today. They led that path. Because, and this is one of the things that I keep saying, like I said to my son recently, there are days when I would go home and I want to go to the beach. I know my mother is coming from school at 3:30. So I make sure I am home by 3 o'clock. Granny. And I bomb. So it goes back to the fact that women have and would continue to play a leading role. It's just that society has failed over the years to recognize the importance that they have played. Because again, when we look at how our society structures itself, that is where we are seeing it. Now, when men like us who understand those issues can say to you that we are supporting our women, it's not just because we want to say it, because we have lived the experience and understand the importance that women continue to play in the development of our society.
You know, context is important. When the words, "I suffer a woman not to teach or to usurp authority over the man," was written, you know, I did some research years ago on it. I can't find it now, but the context is important. You know, this was written in a time where there were, and I read, where there were snickering and so on in the back of the church, and etc. And that is the reason for Timothy writing, "I suffer not a woman to be to usurp authority over the man; she must be silent," etc. You know, and this is just one of many instances in the Bible where it seems to minimize the role of women in church. For example, it also says that "I suffer not a woman to be shorn," etc. She should wear her hair long, because if she doesn't have her hair long, it is as if she is shaven, right? And she should cover her head when in public worship, etc. Lots of these instances, right? But what we are missing is the fact that where it says she should not usurp authority over the man is not an excuse for men to constantly be in a dominating position. It doesn't say they can't be equals, and that is what we are striving towards in the modern world. And Phil Call would have said churches less than 100 years old would realize this, you know. But I would go even further. Another parallel. I know of one church where there are no men. Just for the simple fact that a lot of the men don't go to church. And who leads in that church? By naturally the women. And women have been taking up leadership roles in the church. I would even go a step further. In the law, we realize that wherever reference is made to the male, it is also made to the female, equality, right? So I'm certain that in the Bible, where it refers to, for example, the bishop being the husband of one wife, you know, and etc. And it seems to restrict those classes of leadership to the man. I'm certain that in some time in the future, or even in the present, it would be construed as, you know, wherever it refers to the man, it refers to the woman. And the woman can also aspire to these roles in the church. So I do think that there is room for equality, and more we are seeing it in the church.
Okay. So out from the church into the politics. You touched on it a little bit, Kezran. Now, looking back at our recent past elections, general elections in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in my view, we almost missed out on the opportunity to have female representation in our House of Parliament, even except the Speaker of the House and the female senators. And I mean, the reality is that could have been a catastrophe, especially in this fight where we are encouraging women to reposition themselves and take up leadership roles. But when it comes to the decision-making levels for the country, no representation by women, that could have been catastrophic, right? Now, let's take share some figures now. 47,567 females voted in the last general election since St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which represents almost half of the number of persons who were registered to vote, who came out to vote, 48.5% out of 98,119 on elections day. Now, almost half of the persons who voted on elections day were women, almost half. We had 5 candidates collectively who were women, and not one single woman was elected. But what does that say? Does that in any way hold any bearing to where we are presently as a nation to the acceptance of women in political leadership? Maybe because you can start.
You know, having held a position within the executive of a political party, I have seen women shy away from these leadership positions. And you ask why?
Well, yeah, I'm going to ask why.
You ask why? Within the youth arm, 70% of the executive is made up of women, if I can hazard a guess. The women's arm is very, very vibrant. Within the executive, however, the central executive, most of the constitution of it is mostly male. At the higher levels of politics that you go, is the less females you see, and you wonder why. Why are our women shying away from political leadership? And it's a question I have no answer to. Some years ago, I think it was the World Bank, they were doing a study in the Caribbean, and they sent a female consultant from Jamaica, and she asked the question to several of us: why are the young women shying away from political leadership? And it's a question I still have no answer to. They are incredibly capable women coming through the youth arm, going into the constituency councils, etc., but not coming through to the central executive, not moving further to candidacy. I asked a few of them why, and they would be like, their responses would be like, it's too combative. A lot of your private life comes out. Things you don't even know about yourself. Persons would begin saying about you. You'll be traduced through the airwaves. It seems as if I would hazard a guess as to the answer, it seems as if they are not desirous of coming into political leadership in such a combative environment. And women have a great role to play in political leadership. I mean, how can laws be made which affects women and children without the input of women in parliament? If we think about it now, very little input there will be from the female lobby in parliament, and that is sad. We need to see more women aspiring to the highest levels of political leadership in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
I mean, as Kezran rightly said, and Kezran has been privy to conversations, of course, that with the ordinary man on the street might not be privy to. But when I consider women in politics, I think it's a steeper hike for women as compared to men. I think women are scrutinized more because politics is very combative, yes, and because persons have this perception that women are soft. They would say, well, nah, she can't handle the banter that takes place in the house and that sort of thing. And I think that they are labeled as being the weaker of the two. And I think because that happens, there's a tendency for us to neglect the fact that they are needed in Parliament. I mean, I think that unfortunately, it doesn't seem as if St. Vincent is ready for women to hold those high positions on one hand. On the other hand, I think that women need to get more support from their own female counterparts. We spoke about this in the beginning, that women need to get support from other women, and sometimes the reality is women are their own worst enemies. So you would have a case where a woman is trying to do this to say that, okay, I'm fighting for us women. And in some cases, another woman will come and say, was she really trying? And would cut her down instead of uplift her. So I think there are a range of different factors, and as I said, it goes back to whether or not we as a people are ready to have a woman in such a high leadership position. Even if I'm just to branch to America, where you have Kamala Harris, who is the vice president, and the fact that her husband is what called the first man. The first man. That just saying that the first husband. Just saying that feels weird, because it's something that we're not accustomed to. So we have to start normalizing women in leadership roles so that we can embrace it. Until we normalize it, we're always going to be stuck climbing up this steep hill.
I look at the St. Vincent and the Grenadines context as you alluded to it with the numbers. And I am taken back to the glory days of people like Honorable René Baptiste and Girl in Miguel.
Oh yes.
When they broke out on the scene, even Valsina Ash, who would have been one of the first females here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to be involved in politics. When these women break on the scene, you saw what happened. People like Ivy Joshua, when they came out, they came with thundering episodes. I mean, I asked myself what it would have been like having René Baptiste in this last general election. Understanding what she brings, the dynamism that she brings, and the ability that she has to influence. And then further along that line, to think between her and Gerlin, which of them would have made an excellent Prime Minister for St. Vincent and the Grenadines? It's something that is baffling, but then Keshwan alluded to some of the things that are there. Our politics is so dirty that everything is washed and dragged through the mud. So females don't want to get that bit involved. Then you also look at the whole ideologies that women prefer to see men do certain things, as opposed to appreciating the fact that their female counterparts can and will do likewise. And in some cases, they think beyond, because when a man will just think logically about certain things, the woman now involves the emotional aspect. And so she thinks a little bit more deeper on some ends and wants a response. And when a man would say, okay, you know what, we have enough there, let's move on. Now she ain't moving, she wants to fight that out and make sure that her point is driven home. So maybe she's afraid that Parliament will go too long. Or, you know, these are just the logical bits and pieces. But then again, I go back to René Baptiste and Gordon McGill. They didn't mind the length of Parliament they presented. No, you made mention of us almost losing the opportunity. Siobhan, when Siobhan came on the scene, everybody made a hurrah, boy, this girl can't, and she could not. However, she created a shockwave by the amount of votes that she was able to amass. However, what did we do as a society? quickly find excuses why it would not have happened. So we as a society on one hand is saying, come women, you all need to get in leadership role. Come, you need to go to the forefront. Come, you need to do this. But as soon as they get there, we do not necessarily want to appreciate what they have. We look for the mistakes.
Exactly.
And as soon as the mistakes are made, Babin, tell you so. That would have happened.
Correct.
And I mean, if you listen to even our morning show programs, and the way that they interrogate women sometimes, you ask yourself, what is it that we are saying to our nation and the generation that is coming? And that is why I keep saying, we do not understand the privilege we have as radio announcers when we sit behind the mic.
The power too.
And the power of the words that comes out of our mouth. Because when you start saying to people, listen, we need to appreciate our women. Women are valued. Women are supposed to be cherished and loved. I am very much certain you're going to see a change. We look at some of our artists and the songs that they sing. I am happy to say that I am very appreciative of our Vincentian artists who have taken a very bold stance with the level of music and the quality of music that they have produced. Never mind that one or two who come with their one drop something and sing. I mean, kudos to you, you're still an artist. But no, to just be realistic. I'm talking about those who dig deep and would sit and think of a melody and think of the lyrics that comes with it. Not your one-line, one-hit wonder. They sing a song that is reverbing with you. And if they sing about a woman, you get in your mind, your imagery that is presented is this nicely shaped woman who is eye-catching and all of that. So I'm saying our society has to go back to the drawing board and bring that whole fray and say, listen, woman, you can make a great impact in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. All you need is our men to support you and the women to say, yes, sister, go for it. Because the tragedy is, the men are saying, yes, sister, go for it. But the sister is saying, wait and give it. We want to play. You feel it better than anybody now? Wait in too. So when you have that on one end, and you have the female on another end, so let's go again into mechanics. You see females now heading into that direction. I smiled some time ago, a van was passing on the road, and when I looked, it was a female driver hustling. I was like, yo, Tanti could handle the hand boy. And yeah, I saw one in a 10-ton truck driving up the road, and Tanti shifting. Now, we in society, that ain't cool, you know, because that's supposed to be a man walk. Alright? And so, if they're getting into the trucks, they're getting into the vans, politics should be no different era for them to get into. And I look forward to the day when St. Vincent and the Grenadines can have a female, because you see, we've started the process, Dame Susan Duggan, first female Governor General. I am looking forward to this step, and you're seeing the transitioning happening slowly. Rochelle Ford, Honorable Rochelle Ford, female Speaker of the House. So we are seeing bits and bits, but we need an explosion. We need an explosion. We need our women to just blow and come and say, listen, it's my time now.
The good thing about it is that we as men would be in support of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Before you move on though, one example of a woman of the touch of a woman in political leadership. I'll ask a question. Can you remember what 9 mornings used to be like before Renee Baptiste became Minister of Culture? Exactly.
Carnival.
You know, in sitting down and speaking with her, there was one occasion where she mentioned 9 mornings lunch began under her with 12 people in the backyard. First Caribbean backyard. 12 people. 9 mornings lunch now. It's hundreds of people.
Yep.
And that is the example of a woman's touch in the helms of political leadership.
Correct.
We need women up there.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Our panel, Mr. Phil Carl Jeffers, Administrative Officer in the Ministry of National Mobilization, Mr. Kelsley Cambridge, Councillor, at the Liberty Large Boys Training Center, among other things, of course. Mr. Kesron Walters, barrister at law, among other things. I'm your moderator, the fugitive of Extreme Radio. Alright, if you're just joining us, welcome, better late than never. You're in tune to a panel discussion organized by the SVG Public Service Union Young Workers Committee, presenting to you our discussion, Women Repositioning Themselves for Leadership. And just in case you're wondering why it's an all-male cast on the panel, we're just here to let you know resoundingly that women, we are in support of you. Alright? Now, I still want to take a little bit on the woman in politics, based on an article that I picked up doing some research. Now, it says the shining examples of vital and effective leadership in response to the COVID-19 pandemic have been highlighted by some global media outlets. Countries with women who are head of state, such as Denmark, Finland, Iceland, New Zealand, Germany, Slovakia, even in the Caribbean, Barbados, have been recognized for the effectiveness of their response to the pandemic. These these female leaders did a better job. This is what they're saying, fellas. These female leaders did a better job than their male counterparts in other countries, from being more proactive in responding to the threat of the virus, to implementing restrictions and other measures to maintaining peace, calm, unity, transparency, and compassionate communication. Agree or disagree? Did women, the female leaders, do a better job than their male counterparts who are also leaders of other countries? Agree? Disagree? And why? Your own view. Your own view.
I disagree.
Disagree?
I tend to disagree. Yes, Mia Motley would have done a good job. She was, and why you would have the perception that she would have outperformed her male counterparts is that she took the lead. Whenever there was a press conference, she was out there.
Right.
And the way that she speaks was so reassuring to the electorate, to the persons. When you listen to Mia Motley, you feel like, okay, good. The pandemic is going to end tomorrow. Things are going good in Barbados. When I remember, I was in Barbados when the pandemic hit. I was doing studies at the University of the West Indies for another postgraduate degree. And when she came on the airwaves and she spoke and she said, "Tan in one home," you know, in the Barbadian dialect and everything, and that resolved, you know, resonated with everybody through the Barbadian public, and you felt, okay, good, she is leading from the front, and that gave you the perception that she handled it much better than her male counterparts. But when you look at it, if you're looking at cases, then St. Vincent had less cases, Grenada had less cases, St. Kitts had less cases, Antigua had less cases, Dominica had less cases. To date, Grenada has 0 active cases. I'm not sure if it still is 0. Dominica still has 0 active cases. I'm not sure in St. Kitts. But we had a blossoming of the cases in Barbados, in St. Vincent, in St. Lucia, etc. If you look at it economically, right, Barbados moved to slow down economic activity immediately, and that costed their treasury in excess of $25 million initially, and they ended up having to ask public servants to take a cut in their salary and take a voucher, you know, so that they can get payment in the future of some sort. St. Lucia had the same issue. Antigua had the same issue. I remember Gaston Brown saying, if the lockdown continues, we cannot pay public servants, right? But then here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the approach was a little different. you had to manage it, and they did contact tracing. It was a rapid effort at contact tracing. We initially minimalized the cases, etc., to the point where it got to 0, and then it blossomed again, because of certain issues. You can't say that one leader did better than the others. What metric are you using? I think cumulatively everyone did a great job at managing the pandemic in the region. We didn't see that many deaths across the region, thankfully. At one point in the USA, somebody was dying every 30 seconds, and that was incredible. Same in Brazil. I think recently there were more than 200 deaths in one day in Brazil, because they have a different strain. And then in the UK it got out of hand. In Italy, there were more than 500 deaths every day. At the high point of the pandemic, we did well in the Commonwealth Caribbean. I would find, cumulatively, I wouldn't single out any leader to say he or she did better than anyone.
But you disagree?
I do.
The female leaders did a better job than their male counterparts. Kesley?
I think that the style in which the female leaders, well, you just have to say PM Martley.
Yes.
In the way in which she did it, as Kezron rightly said, she had a conversation. It was like if she was in a room sitting down and telling you, this is the case, it's such and such and such. And other persons looked at it as mommy mia. When you have a cold, mommy will tell you, take this, rub up with Vicks, all kind of bush to drink, bam, 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 to ensure that you're good.
You come and rub your dung.
Rub your dung, right. So I think persons would have liked that style about her in terms of how she would have used a feminine touch to soften the reality of how serious this virus was. When I look at New Zealand, I'm thinking internationally, I think the Prime Minister of New Zealand did an excellent job. Comparatively speaking to the other presidents and stuff like that in the international arena, she did an excellent job. And not only with the virus in terms of even the terrorist attacks and all these different things that have affected New Zealand, I think that she would have done an excellent job. But I would have to admit, like what Kezron said, that I don't think you can single out PM Martley to say that, comparatively speaking to Prime Minister Gonzalez and to Prime Minister Mitchell, that she stood out. She got ahead. She came out to the blocks quick before everyone else. And I think her style and method in how she delivered is what made persons.
Reassurance.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Female touch.
Well, that is what I was going to say. The female touch is evident in the way that they responded. Again, we're going back to the emotion versus the logic. They understood what it meant to have their public or their audience or the electorate being reassured that we got this under control. We got this. On the other hand, you see where, because of waiting for certain things, certain emotional aspects of things to play out, that other things stepped in. Again, you go back to the conversation that women didn't support their style of what they did because they start comparing. But look at what Ralph Gonsalves is doing. Look at what Keith Mitchell is doing. And then you realize, oh boy, this is not really just a prime minister versus prime minister. This is a female prime minister versus a male prime minister. And so we have to be very careful that, and I agree with the two, that we are not singling out any one leader, but you are seeing elements of their leadership style being effective at points where it is utmostly important. Because I remember even in our situation here, that when Dr. Simon Kaiser Beach made certain statements, it gave the public certain reassurance. And even like on your program on morning, I remember one day she said something and you took it, you run with it. And the audience here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines was okay for a period of time, and then you switch to another station and you had a different take on the same female issue, and you had females bashing that particular female as to how and why and what. And I'm saying the banter is going to continue as to who is better at what. But until we have set yardsticks to do the measurements, so we need a baseline. Where do we start as a baseline to measure who is more influential, who is more charismatic, who is more successful at implementation, who is more geared at creating programs and plans? Until we have that base to start from, we are not going to be able to identify and say, this female was better than this person. I mean, we have, like, for example, with the culture, there's a reason why we can't say mama culture. Because certain things, she laid a foundation and there was no one before her who did those type of things. So there's a baseline. But outside of that, you don't have those sort of baselines that you can bench, because you're going to compare a woman to what a man did. True. And depending on who is doing that evaluation and that research, they're going to be subjectively screwed to what their result is going to be.
Alright, getting ready to close it down to the end. Remember, I just got to remind you that we will be joined with a featured presentation from His Excellency Ambassador Hans John. He is here with us, reigning Raga Soca Monarch here in SPG. He is here with us and he will be offering us a special feature in just a little bit. Gentlemen, how do you see women in leadership roles being an upliftment to the trade union movement?
You know, I looked around that the preparation tonight, you know, and I remember Dr. Gonzalez saying that in 1998 and in 2001 it was the women's arm that fueled the campaign to election victory in 2001 and to you know, that insurmountable position in 1998. And I looked around and I see all of the women hustling and bustling, getting the room ready, getting everything ready. And you can see that the women are the engine room of the PSU. And I would certainly love to see a woman at the helm of the PSU eventually. I would love to see what happens when a woman ascends to that, breaks that proverbial glass ceiling and ascends to the pinnacle of this organization.
I share that sentiment, but I want to throw a bit more on it. I think the time is right for the females within this organization, because like I said, I've been a member since I started working with the government, and it was a female who actually made the first contact with me and said, listen, young man, do you understand trade unionism? I said, I've read about it. She said, well, don't read, follow me. And the rest, that was it. So I came, I signed the paper, and then after that we had conversation about why am I in PSU and what it's supposed to mean to me. So we have seen the progression. We are seeing where they are taking up majority spaces on the executive. For one reason or the other, they are not taking the presidency. However, I am happy to say, with this crop of young executive members, it would be remiss of any of these females here not to throw that challenge for the presidency in the next election. Because I've been involved with them for a number of programs. And Fuji, you know that we work when we need our work done. They are on par with the way that we operate. We are in conversations up to 11 o'clock at night. These are people who are nurses and mothers and civil servants who had a long day, and they come back and they said, listen, we're not going to sleep until we get this right, or we'll finish that party tomorrow, but we must finish this piece tonight. Now, if you have that type of energy, and you have the drive to say, okay, yeah, International Women's Day was one day, but International Men's Day is the 19th of November. You know that this crop of young women, along with the young males who are with them, have already begun conceptualizing what will happen on November 19th. Now, I'm saying that to say this: if they can already realize the importance of having men be recognized and feel important in an organization such as the PSU? What stops them from taking the head? Because trust me, I would love to be in a negotiation with these ladies. Especially, like I said, I'm speaking specifically about the young women's group. You have them in a negotiation to discuss paternity leave. I am certain the Prime Minister is going to sit back and watch, and just after a few moments just give up and say, okay, yeah, fellas, you have to have a 2 months home.
I'm going to take you up on that point, but let me have a question first. I'm going to take you up.
Definitely, I agree, because when I came here tonight, I was offered a nice bottle of cold water, and I heard from the little murmurs that there might be food after. So I know that the women are taking care of the men, but I want to go a step further and say that we need to create succession, an opportunity for succession, and that is very important. I think that can be one of the contributory factors that can help propel women to the seat of presidency. But we have to ensure that we create that room for succession. So I don't know if Mr. Boucher is hearing, but hint, hint, you need to ensure that there is some avenue that you can train in the meanwhile so that a woman can ascend to that seat of presidency. But I agree with it, yeah.
Definitely. Now, here's a reality. Women have increasingly become part of the paid workforce and of trade unions, and there have been important achievements in organizing things like collective bargaining agreements and fighting for rights, yet they remain overrepresented in precarious, low-skilled, low-paid jobs with little prospects of career advancement. Do you think an increase in participation of women in leadership positions in unions can create an impact in this regard?
Yeah. Yes, they can. And like I would go again, if this crop of young females who are within the young workers section of the PSU continues on the path that they're going, and I want to agree full-heartedly with Cassidy, the succession planning must be evident, and it should not be a tokenized version of succession planning. So it's not Mr. Boucher coming, and I'm not bashing Mr. Boucher, just want to be very clear, coming to us and saying, oh yes, we have a succession plan in place for females to take over for the next election, and then when the election comes, he presents a list of candidates that doesn't have the female as the top of the chart. It doesn't say well. So I'm saying create the whole succession planning, provide the training opportunities, give them the exposure to understand what collective bargaining is all about. Explain to them what are the nuances when you go to sit before whoever to do your battles, so that they can come prepared with it. And again, Fuji, this is why it is important. It's not the female alone who will be going. They would have men like us in support of what they are doing. Could you imagine a team of 10 persons going to have a conversation with the Prime Minister about salary increase? 5 males, 5 females. And the 5 females decide, we take in the lead. So he listens. And all you just hear when the guy stand up and said, well, so I support point number 5, and we should have a 2.5% increase, and that would be for the next 2 years. The lady continued the conversation. Which you think he's going to remember? What was said by the lady, but that re-emphasized point by the man. And that is one of the things that we're seeing. It goes back even to parenting Fuji. I hate to hear people tell me, oh, wait till the papa come home, I will deal with you. It is a hand-in-hand something. Every sphere of our life is a hand-in-hand something. So the men supporting the women supporting the men, and we are going to get it done. So for me, I believe the time is right for them to be in the leadership position.
Yes, well, anything you want to add?
No, nothing I would want to add. But in 2016, when we were doing the minimum wage review, I remember that most of the participants were women, pushing for the extension of the maternity leave, etc. And I remember that I think Trinidad it was who had just extended maternity leave to about 6 months. I can't remember. And I think that is the effect of a woman. in trade unionism, looking out for the interests of their sisters. And that is where we need more. That is why we need more women in trade unionism, and that's the extent of my contribution.
Well, I guess these two gentlemen have said it for me. But yeah, definitely, I think it is needed to help young women, young girls, to be able to look up to and say that, hey, if she can do it, I can do it too. And I think that the time is ripe right now for women to take advantage of even COVID, so that they can show them that, look, even with a pandemic on our hands, we can still accomplish and achieve these things. And I think it will work in their benefit to ensure that, yes, you can have girls, young girls, and even young women wanting to aspire and achieve to what they have accomplished.
All right. Kesby, I want to take you up on this next point. In your capacity, with the work's being done at the Liberty Lodge Boys Training Center, the importance of nurturing and the importance of education are two pivotal areas in order we are able to achieve. What is being taught versus what should be taught in order to get our men or boys to shape our mindset in regards to gender equality?
Okay, good question. The sad reality is that what is being taught is being taught by the media. And the media.
By the media.
Right. So before, where you would have been socialized by your granny, mommy, and daddy if daddy's in the home, that no longer exists. So now what is being taught, unfortunately, is that you have cases where boys are learning from various sources that they should not learn from. And those sources, I'm saying, would be the media. There are a lot of good music and even the movies and all these things that are out there that have taken up the teaching role of some of these young boys and girls as well. And it has somewhat caused my job to be a bit more difficult, and even parents and guardians' jobs to be a bit more difficult, to try to instill values that have already been instilled by outside sources such as the media and that sort of thing, and even persons who have been bad influences, because persons as well instill negative values. All values are not necessarily positive, there are negative values as well. And I think that can impact significantly the way in which boys learn or are taught. And we need to ensure that we have the right set of persons in these boys' lives, whether it is through mentorship or other programs, to ensure that what they learn, they'll be able to translate it into their way of thinking and how they go about in life.
Yeah, we're good.
Well, when I think about it, young men learn from the agents of socialization. The family has fallen. You don't get a lot of those traditional principles being imparted to the young men through the family. So they will learn it in the streets, they will learn it in the schools. If they happen to go to church, they will learn it in the churches. But primarily they will learn it in their communities. And that is where we have fallen. I do think that in the schools there should be more of this kind of education, sex education, gender relationships, etc. We need to teach more of these behaviors and attitudes to our young men. And a few weeks ago I said it, we were not taught sex education in the grammar school. We were not taught about gender relations in the grammar school. It's just something that you learned, and you picked it up in your community. And we need to do more of that.
Just to add, and I mean, if I'm to get theoretical, right? There's this guy called Maslow, who has his different hierarchy of needs, and you have the different needs. I would have learned it in school, and you have the physiological needs, which would be the food, clothing, and shelter. If some of these needs are not met, And I am glad that Kezron would have jump-started my brain on this. If some of these needs are not met, as he rightly said, the primary agent of socialization is the family. You have the school, you have the church, the community. And in some cases, when these needs are not met in the home, which would be the basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, that child would go and seek out whatever environment provides him or her with that need. So what needs to be done? Okay, so you have to look at the person or persons who are responsible for imparting knowledge and teaching. So doing things like parenting programs, parenting workshops are very important, and I've been allowed to, facilitate some of these sessions to help parents understand the importance of instilling values in their children, because they are the future. So I think that we have to go right back to square one and go right back to the grassroots to ensure that we are training and we are teaching a generation that would be able to carry on some level of positivity.
Two seconds.
Yeah. You just hit a nerve. I remember some years ago, we had a program on air. I don't know if you remember this. And you and I were the only two who came down with the placard, and we got 4 children.
Yeah.
And we started to make noise, and by the time we started making noise, we had almost an entire school. And we start walking, and they brought our placards because they heard us on the radio talking about how we are going to fight for our children. I remember calling John at the time, he was not commissioner then, saw what we were doing, and he said, guys, you all need to have permission from the police, Suffice to say, by the time he said that, the police bike came around and we organized and got him to walk with us. I'm saying that to say that men need to take their responsibilities seriously. And if we as men take our responsibilities seriously, our daughters will become the leaders that the society needs. Because we are going to train them in the things that they need to know, how to appreciate and how to be loved. Our society has gone to the point where what we consider to be love is not what really should be. And you see it acting out in the schools. Then you see them in their socialization processes, that they are doing the very same thing. And so it makes it difficult for some of these things to happen. But if you build a culture in your home that the girl has the same opportunity as the boy, and that you're loving them the same way, and you're showing them, okay, so this week you decide what we're going to have for lunch, and next week you decide what you're going to have for dinner. People don't see that as being important. But as simple as those exercises are, you're saying to your daughter, hold on, you can make decisions in this house that impacts everybody's life. In my case, if I give my daughter that style, I know I eat in whole week. You understand? So? Because she has one thing in her mind that she wants, and that one thing is what she's going to ask for. Now, I'm saying no, if I do that for her, I need to give my son the same opportunity. And when I do both of them, he sees her as being as equal as to him. I remember Christmas gone. I said to him, I can give $50 and I'll give her 20, because they had what they wanted, but just for the kicks of it. My daughter turned to me and said, but Daddy, if you can get 50, I can get 52. And I laughed at it, and then she said, equal rights and justice for all.
Now I wanna go a little bit further. How does the teaching of gender-specific roles in the family affect what we're hoping to accomplish in supporting our women? We grew up hearing that certain chores are for girls and certain chores are for boys, and we grow with that mentality that there are certain jobs that are specific for women and certain jobs for men. How does the teaching of gender-specific roles affect what we're trying to accomplish?
All right.
With the equal opportunities and gender equality and all these fancy terms.
All right. So equality and equity are terms that we continue to mix up. All right. Equality means that is equal. Equity is how do we balance it out to ensure that everybody becomes equal.
Fairness.
All right. So it basically goes down to fairness. When we decide that we're going to talk about stereotyping, which is what gender roles basically does, if we go away from that, where if you're going to say to your boy child, come in the house at 10 o'clock at night, the girl must have the same opportunity to come in the house at 10 o'clock at night. But this is where it creates the problem. If you have not socialized your daughter correctly, that 10 o'clock of the night could be your nightmare. Alright? The same way, it could be your nightmare with the son. Because when he goes out, where is he going? Most likely to somebody's girl child place. Or if he's lemming on the block, somebody's girl child is going to pass and there's going to be some sort of interference, childish, foolish play. Alright? So we look at the chores that are given at home. It's no longer that you're seeing girly if you go and wash your underwear or whatever the case is. You're supposed to learn these things because they are part of your development. Look at what has happened. Cooking has never been a thing that is ascribed for boys to do. But the best chef in the world right now are who? Men. Alright? When you look at what happens when you start leaving St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I even jump into university. When you have athletes traveling with you to international games, and you listen to what they're saying and how they're saying, they're expecting you to do what their mother would do for them. So a simple thing as making up their bed is a big chore. Tidying up the room, making sure that your clothes smell good and all this kind of thing. You see that as mommy or girly. So we need to get away from those stereotypes and start saying, if you want equality, then these are the things that must happen.
Maybe it's because she didn't have girl children why my mother put so much effort into us as boys. I remember when I turned, was it 14 probably, my mother said, all you big men know, I'm not ironing for you, I'm not washing for you, nothing like that. From the time you came out of the little short brown pants in grammar school and you put on a long pants, that was it. You had to iron for yourself, you had to wash your own clothes, you had to do everything in the house. And then you had to start making a meal here and there for yourself, your breakfast or your dinner, etc. You know, in order to create well-rounded individuals in society, we need to get rid of gender stereotypes in the home. A man should be able to do as much as a woman can do. A man should be able to take up a needle and sew up a pants if necessary. at least thread it and sew up a pants if necessary. I remember I was in the UE and I had my little sewing kit. I mean, some guys would say, you know, that isn't something for a man to do, but I always had my little sewing kit, you know, to stitch up a pants if I liked that pants.
Or stick back on a button.
Or put back on a button. I remember my mom teaching me how to put back on a button and thread it this way, that way. You know, in order to create well-rounded individuals in society, we need to get rid of gender stereotypes. Our females, our sisters need to learn to change a tire, to check the oil in the car, to check the coolant, to clean the car, etc. You know, we need to get rid of those gender stereotypes in society in order to create well-rounded individuals.
Yeah, well said. I know I had to learn a lot of things by trial and error. So my first attempt at pilau was a sweet piece of rice. You know, I had to learn the hard way. You know, my mother didn't sit me down and say, well, this, no. I had to learn the hard way. But what we need to realize is that everyone has to play a role in ensuring that these gender stereotypes are not soaked up by our young people. And the sad reality is that you would have a case where a boy growing up, he might be inside, he might be washing wares or doing some other chore that is deemed to be a female chore, and then the mother or the girl or whoever sees that chore being done by the boy and say, why are you doing that as a girl? And then when this boy grows up and you hear the same girls or same women saying, I wish I have a man who could do this, who can do that, who can do this. So it's almost borderline hypocrisy on one hand saying that, you know, these roles are for women. And then when you're older and you realize that, wait, you know, Why are we putting roles to different sexes? Anybody can do it, but we turn back and now say, oh gosh, I wish a man could do X, Y, and Z. So I think all of us have a role to play in getting rid of the stereotypes, the gender roles. And I'm already seeing in St. Vincent and even at the university level where you have now a lot of girls doing engineering and these other, all these things that were deemed men job. So it's good, and we have started, so that's a kudos to us. Yeah.
We want to turn our attention now to the audience. Any question from anyone in the crowd? Any question for our panel? No?
At least one man.
One question for
One question.
Tyson.
Yes, please.
He said that SPG is not ready for women. I think totally right for women in families. We're not quite ready. Why is it that you say that?
Right. So I'm saying that based on how we are behaving. So maybe on paper, as we would say, yeah, we're ready. But based on how we are behaving, it seems as if we are not ready to take that step. So our actions speak louder than our words. As Fuji had said, he showed how much women voted. But at the end of the day, our woman is still not there. So our actions would dictate that it seems as if we're not ready for it. On paper, yeah, we're ready, but in actuality, it seems as if we have a long way to go still. Answer?
Good. We're getting ready to wrap up. We're gonna have our feature by Hans in a few minutes. I have about two more. We touched on just about all most sectors within our society. I want to touch on this one in particular. The music industry is perceived to be, well, I think there's enough evidence to show that it is male dominated. Automatically a man can pop up today and shoot his way to stardom, to the top, like tomorrow. It's not so easy, not so fast for a woman. Even if in some cases she might be more dedicated and passionate or naturally talented than the male, she has to endure all forms of abuse and exploitation. That's the reality. Even here in SPG, not only our female creatives, but women across various professions, or civil servants, or nurses, or police officers, teachers, they are plagued by this. How can we ever begin to address this when more and more of our females are entrapped by these situations? What should we as men do to help to eradicate this?
Okay, geez, since everybody else is rushing to speak, I think that verbal encouragement. Some of these other artists who are men and who are at the top of their game, a simple verbal encouragement can go a long way. They need to step up, stand by these women, encourage them, mentor them at times as well. Mentorship can go a long way. Teach them the tricks of the trade, if you want to use that for lack of a better word. But to show support for them can go a long way in getting them started on that journey to stardom as well. Short and simple.
Anybody else want to add? Kezwan, there's one. Kesley made a point earlier in relation to the threatening of the ego of a man in his opening statement. The reality is when a man feels threatened by his female partner, whether by her overall achievements or success, better job, bigger salary, or even being self-assertive, some might say outspoken, in many cases he will resort to violence, right? There might not be any quick fixes to this issue, but how do we as men tackle, at least begin to reach out, have that discussion with our fellow brothers who might be faced with these situations?
I've always used the opportunity to encourage my fellow brothers never to hit a woman. I mean, sometimes a woman can be really naggy. She can get to you. She can get on your last nerve. But resist the urge. As much as is possible, resist the urge to hit a woman. Right? That's the baseline. And that we should start at. Where possible, resist the urge. Do not ever hit your counterpart. I mean, from the time you do that, the relationship breaks down.
Yeah, that's the line.
And there's no coming back. She's going to lose confidence in you. And a woman is going to look for every opportunity to get back at you. Right? It could be that she will take your toothbrush and put it in some undesirable places. She will get back at you. Right? But that's just the surface. There are many ways that the law addresses it as well. There's the Domestic Violence Act, right? I mean, there's so much recourse for a woman or even a man who is battered, who is the subject of domestic violence. There is a protection order which is very wide-ranging under the Domestic Violence Act. The court can order lots of different things, from an occupation order allowing that battered spouse to occupy premises, an order restricting the spouse who is inflicting that domestic violence from coming close to the dwelling house or the school or the workplace, etc. An order mandating that person continues to pay maintenance or mortgage or rent or honor their financial obligations, etc. So lots of different means of enforcing against domestic violence. But I think that we should always start at encouraging our brothers to be kind to our female counterparts.
I realize you, like you said, you really want to keep us long tonight with these questions. The sad reality is that when you look at the legislative framework and how it operates, at times it's disheartening that the judicial process takes long.
Yes.
And when you would have sit and create these pieces of legislation that is supposed to do the protection and the covering of both male and female, and then you hear somebody saying, "I'm not bothered with that, because that'll take too long." I think in order to support the development, we have to start to look at expediencies. How we can get a matter is reported, because I could tell you, Fuji, working in the ministry, these are things that we deal with. So a matter is reported via telephone or a walk-in situation. In less than 24 hours, the initial process begins, which is with the police getting persons from the DPP, coordinating whatever. That whole mechanism gets started. When it gets to the process where it is supposed to continue, there seems to be a slowing down of the process. And I'm not casting aspersion anywhere, but I'm just saying, I think the time has come, maybe for us to develop night court, to look at these issues for expediencies. Because I remember some time ago, because of the length of time it took, a sister would have lost her life through a process. So there are things that are there, but execution and implementation of what is there needs to have some more urgency in being able to protect when it comes to those domestic violence issues. And also, we are heading in the direction of creating the gender policies from within the ministry and making them more relevant to today's society. Where they need to be harmonized, there will be harmonization. Where they need to be modernized, there will be modernization. However, having that done and having it sit without any action added to it makes absolutely no sense. So on one hand, you're doing, but on the other hand, there needs to be the support. And I think that is the genesis of what we're talking about here tonight. While one is doing, the other must support in order for it to be effective. So again, we look at the processes, And even under the PSU, we need to have those coming in and ensuring that they are part of the entire process. So when you talk about the legalities, PSU understands how they would be able to help with those bits and pieces.
I think that when it comes to domestic violence, it's a very serious issue. And although we have the courts which carry out their various processes to address this, speaking from the counseling aspect, the counseling side, I think there needs to be almost mandatory therapy, in the sense that what we realize is that a lot of men can't cope well. It starts out with their inability to cope with either rejection, major thing is rejection, with disappointments and all these different type of things. And you know, we appreciate the fact that men need help, but women need help as well too. Because when we speak about domestic violence, we don't only speak about violence being perpetrated by men against women, but there are cases where women also abuse men, and that's a whole discussion by itself there. But the thing about it is that we have to normalize therapy, meaning that whether it is to get anger management sessions, helping these men to develop new coping skills to deal with their aggression, those are different factors that collectively would help to address and limit domestic abuse to becoming so severe in our country. But everyone must be willing to collaborate, whether it is through the different government or non-governmental organizations, to ensure that once we do this, it will be a collaborative effort. Yeah.
Okay. Now we just about to wrap things up. I want to say thank you to Kesley, Kezran, Philbel. Thank you very much. I'm going to give you the opportunity now to share some final words before we wrap up. But I want to, for those of you who joined us in our panel discussion, we say thank you. It was a presentation by the SBG Public Service Union and the Young Workers Committee entitled Women Repositioning Themselves for Leadership. Ladies, we were here discussing, continuing the narrative that has been started already and is ongoing, letting you know resoundingly we are here to support you. Now, what I would like you to add, I mean, there's a saying that says, God helps those who help themselves. And as much as we are here to support you, ladies, what would you say as we wrap up? What would you say to ladies to encourage all women, right, to stand up, speak out, take action, accept the challenge, right? Because there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, with all women empowering themselves. Words of encouragement to all ladies as we wrap up.
Well, for the ladies out there, the women, the girls, you have the ability to accomplish anything that you put your mind to. Because I subscribe to Christianity, I would say put God first. With God, you have the majority, and you're able to accomplish anything that you put your mind to. You don't have to wait for other people's approval for you to be successful. If you put your mind to it, you'll be able to accomplish and achieve it. That's my piece.
Well, I would just admonish the women to keep pushing, keep breaking the glass ceilings. But as you do so, remember your sisters and remember your brothers. The majority of persons in the public service are female. The majority of persons in my profession are female. It means that the scourge of male underachievement is increasing. And as you go further up, bring up somebody with you. All right? Keep pushing, breaking the glass ceilings, but as you go further up, help someone up as well.
Correct.
I want to, first of all, commend the young workers movement here within the PSU for taking bold steps in, first of all, having an all-male panel to discuss a gender-sensitive issue, and expecting, nonetheless, balanced views from your panelists and your moderator. It's not always that you see females sitting and saying, allow men to have this type of conversation. But I want to challenge you as well, to challenge your president and say to him, the time is right and ready for us to take leadership role. And not just leadership role, but to be the president of the organization. I challenge to those who are listening that your socialization process must be one that is equitable and diverse, so that you would then develop the next best leader here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, whether it be your son or your daughter. And to the fathers who are part of the socialization process, that you continue to support the mothers. You have an equal responsibility in creating and shaping St. Vincent and the Grenadines. For those who would want to go down the political divide, the time has come for us to stop political divisiveness as it relates to the development of our organizations and our communities, so that we can have a better St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Because at the end of the day, political leaders come and they go, but our community is going to continue forever. And if we understand the impact that we can make within St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we will then be able to support our women and tell them, go for it, girl, shoot for the stars. You're going to land somewhere in the galaxy. And that's my contribution.
Okay. Having said that, we now invite our youth rep, our PSU youth rep, Miss Kenza Hall, to give the vote of thanks, and then we will close with our guest performer.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.
Ladies, great food for thought. Let's keep stepping up and showing up. Let's reposition ourselves for leadership. I must firstly thank God for giving us this opportunity to be here tonight. I also want to thank the executive, the president, and the other members for supporting us with our event tonight. I want to say a special thank you to our panelists. To God, thank you a million for help assisting me with this project as well. And to the other panelists for responding within short notice and presenting yourselves here. This alone shows that you are in support of women. To the moderator, another thank you for supporting and assisting us with this project. So I want to say another special thank you to my committee for pushing along with me and helping to make this event a success. And I wish everyone safe journey home, and I see great partnership here among us. Thank you.
Now, our guest performer. I don't want to tell the public who it is. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
You're so
Okay, maybe we could make
You guys know who this is?
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night.
Good night.
Excuse me and the mask, but the mask makes it very difficult for me to sing, right? But encouraging persons out there not to drop their gear and continue to follow the necessary protocols that the government and the health protocols that the government have in place, and be good citizen, right? So, hands John, I listened to the discussion on my way here on Facebook and the various platforms, and being in the audience, I must commend you guys on a well put together discussion with valid points and good reasoning. Some I do agree with and disagree with. You know, Walters, I know you've been punching hard all night, but I just want to reinforce some of the points that we need to really champion the success of women in society. There's the wind of change that is blowing among, us, and we need to further encourage our women, especially the younger ones. It's not only when they would have reached the pinnacle or at the top. We gotta start nurturing them from a young age, from secondary school to college, you know, so that we could have continuity. And I was looking for that in the discussion it came about, but I was looking for more of that as it relates to, you know, the youth development and the young females looking to aspire to be the next prime minister or the next financial controller and stuff like that, and taking up, you know, the dominant role in society in terms of the job market and so forth. But all in all, a healthy discussion, and I accept the challenge here tonight. So I'm gonna sing Holy Faith, and I hope this will go a long way and give you guys some encouragement during this time, and to push forward also for the PSU as an organization, as a union. I see that this is highly dominant by females here tonight. You know, President Dean Kendra continue to do a great job and champion the role of female. Alright? So I see your tears, I feel your pain, my people. I know it's hard, but we shall overcome. Holy faith, yeah. We gotta win this one. I know it's hard, but we shall overcome. I sing, oh, we got to fight this fight. We got to do what's right. Oh, my people, we will rise. One day, yeah. When you're feeling down, yeah. Holy faith, only smile, no frowns, yeah. Holy faith, you better get on your knees, yeah. Holy faith, call on the Almighty. I singing, holy faith, yeah. Holy faith, holy faith, holy faith, holy faith, holy faith. Listen, now is the time for us to come together as one love, one heart, my people. No. So now is the time for us to come together as one and support each other. More love, more respect, and more strength in everything that we do. My name is Hans John. I represent St. Vincent and the Grenadines Soca Music to the fullest. I represent culture. And speaking of culture, we as artists have our own social or creative responsibility as it relates to women empowerment, the political and social impact of our music on these factors that I highlighted. And it's a healthy discussion, and I wish next time I can be a part of it, not only as a guest performer or a featured artist, but as a panelist as well. I'm sure representing good night.
Thank you to all of you. I'm closing right there. Have a good night.